I can Zoom all day, but literally, Chris, I talked a kid off the edge who had a gun in his hand ready to go commit a murder. I mean, literally. Me and my team had to talk this man crying with a gun in his hand and get him back to safety. Right? This is what's going on in our community, and you're not going to see the cameras. You're not going to see the media for that.
So talk to me. Here we have the developing news where police have been able to make an arrest in this case, 18-year-old, just days after this Black Friday shooting. What do you make of this?
Yeah. Not surprised. With everything pointing to the direction that I saw when me and my team who came on the scene in the moments after and assessing the situation, interviewing some of the young people. And the reason why I continue to say it was an isolated incident, it was a beef prior to this actual tragic moment. There was all things leading because there was traces of the fight, traces of the beef, traces of the engagement with these young people that knew each other. Unfortunately, so many of our young people who have these issues with each other, it plays out on social media, right? So it's almost kind of like an easy connect the dot for police officers, as well as having the cameras, as well as having a bunch of witnesses. So I continue to say this was just a heinous but stupid act by a young person that probably just went over the edge and didn't know how to deal with what he was dealing with the young man that he unfortunately killed.
Well, and talk to me about that because, what is it? How do you have to, is it just you just don't care about going to jail, or do they not feel that they're going to be caught? Because it wasn't even like they really had anywhere to run or to go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'm wondering if they caught him in Sacramento. You know what I mean? It's like, did he even feel maybe I should maybe drive past and go to Stockton or go to LA? Some of these young people literally go back to their house kind of waiting for the next moment. And the unfortunate part about it, when we were, again, dealing with the young people in that moment, we were looking at posts that they had shared already, right? So it's almost like folks kind of knew who actually did it, and then that's kind of like the horrifying thing. Like, these young people aren't trying to not get caught. It's like almost a badge of honor to get caught. It's almost, you get more follows, you get more likes if you get caught up in a situation where you can be called a shooter or you are on demon time. The psychological warfare that's happening with our young people is real. And like I say, again, when we talk about investments, a mental health investment is going to be a huge deal moving forward, because some of our young people are not having value for their own lives as well as for the lives that they take. And that to me is alarming altogether.
Well, I think this is really what this boils down to, right? Because when we start to look at this arrest, when we start to look at, like you say, this has happened in a public setting, in a mall, it had plenty of witnesses, people were recording, and all this stuff. The idea that the care just was not there at 18 years old, suggests that you're right, that something needs to, there's something, and even the chief said it. He said that this should be a wake-up call for everyone. You agree?
Yeah. Well, again, Chris, and I'll say that's one thing that me and the chief can agree on. I think that this has always been, and this idea, like when we say defund the police, I know folks hate that analogy, right? Defund. They don't want to utilize that capacity of what we're saying. But the truth is we need an investment. When you look at it, 60% of the city's budget goes to policing. 60%. There's not a part of that pie cut off for youth services, violent prevention, and intervention services. We have to come every 3 years, every 5 years to fight for funding to utilize to do the work that we do. So we don't have a budget every year. Well, maybe there might be some cuts.
Wait though. But the mayor is taking heat right now because people said, the mayor is taking heat right now because he said when they had the mall melee last year, well, we ought to spend money on do pop-up events and try to do things to try to help
Chris, let me stop you. Chris, let me stop you.
And so they're saying, so the mayor, you claim that all we needed to do was to do community investment and do money and this would stop crime. And the mayor is saying, well, wait a minute. You know which
I
one
know
is it?
that's unfair because here again, Chris, if we were going to really lay down the foundation, let me break it down. Zero youth homicides for 2 years before 2020, before COVID. The mall last year, there was not an incident that happened at the mall after we created the community pop-ups. So 7 years of the mall being shut down, community change agents were there in 2019, and there's nothing that happened. Now you have COVID, and now you have this pandemic. All of the resources that we have, all of the things that we've been doing or have been doing, we have no access to that. So it's not something that the mayor did not do. It's a system that we've had to deal with has always been broken. So it looks at more of a systematic problem than a problem of saying you're not investing money. Because when you were investing money, we made strides. I don't know why people forget. There were zero homicides. Let me repeat, zero homicides in the city of Sacramento. And that's not just because of over policing. That's because of community organizations got the investment. But now you have COVID. Everywhere in the United States, the shooting and murders have doubled up and tripled. This is national. So what's happening in Sacramento is happening in New York, it's happening in LA, it's happening in St. Louis, it's happening in Chicago. So none of this stuff that's hitting Sacramento is anything new. And I think that some people like to forget about the investments and what happened before because
So
they're
you're saying
seeing
the
shootings at the
investments did
cemetery.
work. You're saying the investments
Yes, they
did work.
did. Yes, they did. Because now you see shootings at the cemetery, you see shootings at the mall, you see shootings, at the parks. And guess what? Everybody's either sheltering in place or living at home, and everyone gets to see it firsthand. Because before, when we were having these issues, nobody cared, even though we were pushing to get a stronger investment. And that's why I say 60% of the budget in the city goes to police, and crumbs and a bucket of rice and lemonade go to people that do the work like me, and we have to fight for it every year. So you cannot blame the mayor about an investment when their investments were made and we had zero homicides in the city. Pandemic hit, and you see what's going to happen. Kids aren't in school, kids don't have sports. All of those play a relevant role in what's happening right now.
They don't have the mentorship that they depend on in many cases.
They don't have the mentorship the way it needs to be. I can Zoom all day, but literally, Chris, I talked a kid off the edge who had a gun in his hand ready to go commit a murder. I mean, literally, me and my team had to talk this man crying with a gun in his hand and get him back to safety, right? This is what's going on in our community, and you're not going to see the cameras. You're not going to see the media for that. But this is a constant thing that a lot of the organizations like Advanced Peace,
Well,
like
why are
Brother
they
to
so
Brother,
angry? What's
are
happening? Is
doing
it because they don't have that? What's the anger about? What is there's distress?
Life, man. Life is tough. I mean, life is tough. And think about it. Folks want us to do work for generations of trauma, unprocessed trauma, connected with poverty, connected with pain, isn't a good remedy. So you have all of these people isolated, and they can't connect to the people that they're used to connecting to. Life, as we all know it, isn't normal. So what do you think is going to be their response time? And they're only getting imagery of demon time. They're only getting imagery of guns. They're only getting imagery of negativity. I mean, there has to be a solution. You can't just point at the organizations. We have to look at the overall scope of everything. We have to look at the household. We have to look at the communities. We have to look at some of the things that the police may not be doing. And we have to look at, we need more of a major investment. We had to fight for $2 million.
Well, you know, the
COVID
police said that it's the protest. They said that y'all was having all these protests, and they had to
man.
take the people that they had to take their
Really?
people who were doing the engagement with the gangs and were doing the mitigation and put
that
them
has
on the
nothing to
streets.
The protest had nothing to do with any of that. Chris, again, homicides and shootings are up 100% statewide, nationally. Go to any statistic in any city in any state, you'll see it's up 100%. Why do you think Sacramento was going to be any different? It had nothing to do with the protests. At the end of the day, people are miserable. People don't have outlets. People feel lost. And folks are going to do certain things just because their mentality is, if no one gives a damn, then I don't give a damn. And what we're saying to these young people, we give a damn, and we need you to give a damn about yourself. But at the same particular time, we are calling out for more accountability and more responsibility for not only parents, but all people that are working with our young people, whether it's the police, whether it's the city mayor, anybody.
So what do
We
you
have
need
to
then?
do a creative collective.
What do you need then?
We need a bigger investment, dog. Like, you can't have millions and millions of hundreds and millions of dollars going to policing, and we only get thousands. And you have to think about it. This trauma that we're dealing with, this thing and dilemma that we're dealing in, has been generational. Generational curses passing from generational curses are passing. It's a system. So if we don't get a major investment that is going to be sustainable, I'm not talking about 3 years, now we got to move on to the next thing. This has to be a part of the public safety initiative. We have to be right there on the budget, right there on the agenda, not taken away. And I guarantee you, time will show, because we've done it before. Hello, people. 0 homicides in 2 years, and those community pop-ups, as much as people wanted to talk crazy about them, they actually worked because they kept youth off the street as well as youth employed. Now tell me where the young people are going to go when most of the community centers are shut down, there's no sports activities, and there's not a place where kids can go ahead and congregate with adults that can help.
So what are you going to do with the
maneuver.
money? So what do you do with the money? You get the money, and what are you going to do with it that's going to, this time around, given the pandemic and
Well,
all?
I mean, if we, like I said, getting real money, I mean, we have to get real money before we can sit there and say anything, because like I said before, we have to have real money. Not money that you give us for a year, 6 months, and then we got to fight another year, 6 months, and we have to tell you the value of it. Hopefully, what's happening will show you the value of youth intervention and prevention. Why? Because here's the thing. A lot of us have been slowed down with our work, even though youth intervention workers and prevention workers are still on the street. But police have been here doing the same work, having the same amount of money. And we're having these homicides. And I'm not going to say it's all on them, but I'm saying when folks want to sit there and say, well, it was the police that made the 0 homicides. Okay, well, you guys are on stage, do it and show us. They haven't been able to do that, because the willingness of people to understand it takes us all to do the work has to be right now. And that means we have to have a larger investment. I will always say that. You cannot sit there and put millions of dollars in one thing and give a few nickels and dimes to another thing that has a larger problem. Our kids don't have the capacity, a lot of them, to assess what's next. Literally, Chris, our kids would rather be stone cold Facebook called a killer and a shooter, go to jail, prison for the rest of their lives, than really deal with the emotional pains and adversity. That to me is scary. That to me is super scary, because I've never seen a generation that would rather do time in prison than figure out how I can communicate, or if I got beat up, live to fight another day, and just say, you know what, I don't want to deal with the gang banging, I don't want to care about that, but really fall into that because they feel that's the only hope for them to feel relevant. Our young people are screaming and crying for help. They've been doing it for a while. This pandemic has just been a scope of showing everything that we have said for years and years. We need a major, clear investment that's sustainable, that's tangible, that's not going after 5 years.